Alright, let's take a look at 4 divided by negative 2. Now, dividing by negatives is never easy to comprehend, and even for me, a lot of times it's hard for my mind to wrap my mind around it. But when we write it on a number line, it definitely helps us understand the visual. So we're going to start at the number 4, okay? So we're here on the number line, number 4, in between 3 and 5. We're going to divide by negative 2. Now remember, a negative times a negative gives you a positive, so therefore our answer here must be a negative number. Now, if I'd regularly divided by 2, I would end up with 2, right? But I'm dividing by negative 2, so therefore my answer must be negative, and therefore my answer is negative 2. And again, in case that confuses you, negative 2 times negative 2 would give you what we started with, which was 4. And why does the negative times negative give you positive? Because you're taking away the negative. When you take a negative away, you get positive back. It's like taking someone's debt away, right? You're reversing the direction on the number line when you multiply by a negative number. So, therefore, the division works out to give you the negative 2 back. Okay, so perhaps much easier is if we would have just taken 4 and divided by 2 to get 2, right? And then made it negative. So find the positive answer and just flip it on the number line. But guess what? We got the same number back. So therefore we've just shown that negative, the negative's on the bottom. 4 divided by negative 2 is the same as if we just put the negative out front. In other words, we've taken the original negative and moved it to the front. Let's look at some more examples. Suppose we start with positive 6, okay? And then we also divide by negative 2. Well, we would normally get positive 3, but again, the answer has to be negative. So the answer must be negative 3. Okay, so therefore we're going to end up at negative 3. Okay, so again, negative times negative gives you a positive, so 6 divided by negative 2 gives you negative 3. Now, just like before, what if we just did 6 divided by 2 first, which gives us positive 3, and then just flipped it over the number line? We still would have ended up with negative 3. So therefore, we've shown that 6 divided by negative 2, is the same as just taking that negative and moving out front to put it there. Let's look at one more example. This time we're going to have the numerator smaller than the denominator. 2 divided by negative 3. So here's 2. Now if we just were to divide by 3, we'd have a positive number, right? But we're dividing by negative 3, so the answer must be negative. Therefore, the answer is negative 2/3. And that kind of hints at what we're going to do next. Suppose we took the 2 and divided by 3 and landed in the positive side and then just made that negative. Let's go this direction. We'd still end up at negative 2/3. So again, we've shown that 2 divided by negative 3 is the same as negative 2/3. In other words, we took the negative, we moved it out front to get right there. The name of this lesson is Simplifying a Positive Divided by a Negative. And just like dividing a negative by a positive, all we're doing is taking that negative and moving it to the front. So actually, if we want to show it properly, we're taking this negative and we're moving it to the front to give you negative a over b. So a divided by negative b is equal to negative and then a over b. It's real simple. First example, official example, 7 divided by negative 5. Well, we're just going to move that to the front. So therefore the negative is going to go right here. And the answer is negative 7 over 5. Next example, again, and this time I'll show it going all the way across. X over negative y, if we simplify that, we need to move it all the way to the front of the x over y. Therefore the answer is negative x over y. So in fact, it's the same exact steps as if you have a negative over a positive. It works exactly the same. Just move it to the front. Now some of you might be asking, how is that simplifying? It looks like it's about the same. I mean, we started with an x, a y, and a negative, and we ended up with an x and a y and a negative. Well, It's actually easier to simplify comprehend. Let's go back to the number line. Isn't it a lot easier to think about negative 2/3 than it is to think about 2 divided by negative 3? I mean, you can picture where negative 2/3 is on the number line. We know it's between negative 1 and 0, and so it's for conceptual purposes. Remember, the word simplify means to make simpler or shorter, and a fraction with the negative out front is simpler. It's easier to understand. So that's why we do it that way. Okay, m divided by what gives you negative m over n? Well, if the answer here is negative, then this must be negative, right? And since we have an n here, then that means this must be negative n. Again, all you've done is taken the original negative and moved it out front there. Okay, how about this one? What number divided by negative 2 gives you negative pi over 2? Well, since we already have a negative down here, this can't be negative because negative times negative gives you positive, but this answer is negative. So your numerator must be positive and it must be the same as what's on the right, so therefore it must be positive pi. Pi divided by negative 2 gives you negative pi over 2. You've taken the negative, you've taken the negative and you've moved it out front. Okay. AB divided by negative xy. So we have AB divided by negative xy. Well, again, the simple trick is just take the negative and move it out front. Therefore, the answer is negative AB over xy. Doesn't matter how involved or complex the math expression may be, it's still the same concept. Just move the negative out front. 3 divided by negative r. So we have 3 divided by negative r. Again, just take the negative, move it out front. It works for when you have constants mixed with variables, so therefore the answer is negative 3 over r. And yes, you can have variables on the denominator. Okay, let's look at this one. We have square root of 7 divided by negative 100 equals negative square root of 7 divided by what? Well, we had a negative here, right? And the final answer was negative, so it must have moved out front. And if we moved it, then if we move that negative, then the denominator must be positive, right? So it's positive 100. Had you put negative 100 there, that wouldn't have been correct, because on the right-hand side, you would have had 2 negatives, which make a positive, but for the original, or for the number on the left, we only had 1 negative. So it wasn't a positive number. So in short, again, you're just taking the negative and you're moving it out front. That's all you're doing, and therefore the denominator must have been positive 100. So this lesson is titled Simplifying a Positive Divided by a Negative, and just like taking negative divided by positive, all you're doing is you're taking it and moving it out to the front.